Howdy doody, Armoured Pants here. Bonjour, perhaps I should say. It's a French tank we're going to look at, the AMX 30B, the Tier 10 French collectible. Now, I described this video as the tank you don't know because I'm pretty sure that what we're going to discuss in this video you won't know. You won't know about this tank's historical significance and you won't know about it in Blitz so much. Before that, just a reminder that we now have the Discord channel open for the YouTube channel. There's going to be a link in the description, so come and join us there. Now, in terms of the tank itself in Blitz, we're going to have a look at the tech spec using blitzhanger.com. But before that, I thought I'd talk to you a bit about the historical significance of this tank, because I guess a lot of you, even those of you interested in tanks, wouldn't be aware that this tank was mass-produced, so over 3,500 of them produced, different variants of it. And that it has seen active combat across various theatres in the world, and it's been deployed in Europe, Africa, South America and the Middle East. And right now, even as we speak, it's in active combat in the Saudi-Yemen border conflict. So this is a significant tank, right? It has been on extreme manoeuvres with NATO, which you're watching here. It's formed a backbone of French military. It was part of the first Gulf War when it was part of the Kuwaiti forces that actually fought directly against the Iraqi armoured forces in the reconquest of the Kuwaiti territory taken in the first Gulf War. And it's hugely significant in that, you know, this tank was really, really effective. And it also was a part of a huge design change, and that's why it's really significant in terms of tank development. So this tank is second only to the Leopard in power-to-weight ratio for a main battle tank, right? So that's why in Blitz it's so agile and mobile. But secondly, this tank represents a kind of a sea change in tank development, in that when they were developing this tank, tank warfare changed significantly due to the proficiency of new anti-tank missile systems. So therefore the engineers realized that, you know, putting a lot of armor onto a tank is kind of insignificant because most anti-tank missile systems could punch through whatever amount of armor you put on. So they realized that the future of tank warfare is not going to be about, you know, big, heavily armored tanks, but agile, mobile tanks with a good rate of fire, accurate gun systems, and the ability to get around a battlefield, to maneuver, to cross open ground quickly, to maneuver behind the enemy, to flank, etc., to be involved in pincer movements, as for example, as German General Norman Schwarzkopf did in the first Gulf War. They realized this is the future of tank warfare, so they completely changed the design of this tank, took off a lot of the armor and made it really light and agile. And therefore it represents this watershed in modern tank design, the move away from heavily armored tanks towards the more agile, mobile tanks that we see today, of which this and the Leopard are key proponents. So overall, a fantastic, historic and significant tank, and one, of course, which we're happy to have in Blitz and happy to play in Blitz. And we're going to look at, of course, its key characteristics in Blitz to see, you know, how exactly does it fit into Blitz compared to its real-life mobility and skill. So in terms of setting it up in Blitz, I would use pate, coffee and croissant and improved fuel. That maxes out your performance, like your view range, rate of fire, and that's very important, particularly for a medium tank. The 100mm gun gives you 250mm of pen with AP, heat 295 and 53 with HE. If you use calibrated shells, it goes up to 263, 325 and 58mm of pen, respectively, with those different round types. Now, I wouldn't run calibrated shells, and we'll discuss why in a couple of minutes. Now, here's the thing about this tank. Its muzzle velocity is phenomenal. It's one of the best in Blitz. It's 1921 meters per second. Now, that's with AP. Of course, it decreases a bit down to 1525 with heat and HE. Its gun index, as you then would expect with that muzzle velocity, is 20.4. So basically, that's the same as Grille. So this is a medium tank, basically with Grille gun handling. I would run gun rammer, supercharge, and vertical stabilizer on this. The gun depression is 10 degrees, 20 degrees in elevation, so it has super gun alignment. We will discuss, by the way, the mobility index a bit later, which is also super. The mobility index is 21, so it's also one of the best in Blitz. It does 65 kilometers per hour and has a super power to weight ratio, which gives it that mobility index. Its concealment numbers, well, for a tank with a view range like this of 308 meters, it's going to spot you up within 259 meters. So it's not great, it has to be said. And if you move and fire, that goes out to 292 meters, which basically means everything on a map can spot you. So that is definitely a weakness of this tank. And it's one of two weaknesses I believe it has. This is the second one. Its reload time. Its reload time is 6.9 seconds if you use gun rammer. If you use calibrated shells, it goes out to 7.42 seconds, almost 7.5 seconds. That's really high for a medium tank at tier 10. When you consider that the T-22 was firing at 5.3 seconds, and both the Russian Tech 3 tanks are firing at 5.5 seconds, it means you're into trouble if you get into a brawl with those guys, right? But that's one of only two weaknesses, and the other one is, of course, as we discussed, the concealment numbers. They are not great for a medium tank. You can, of course, spot and scout on this because it does have that 308 meters of view range, but I would suggest that until you know where all the guns are in the game, particularly the big guns, that you don't fire because you blow your camo numbers way up by 65 plus meters. So I wouldn't do that. If you look at the armor profile of this tank, well, it has no armor on the sides and back, as you would expect, and that of course plays into the historical development of this tank, which we just discussed. However, it does have a very, very strong turret, and mainly down to this huge gun mantlet which it has on the occupying most of the front of the turret. It doesn't have much armor on the rest of the turret, but the angles that it creates actually give a high relative armor numbers, and therefore this tank can go hull down because it has 10 degrees of gun depression, right? It has 20 degrees of elevation as well, so it has fantastic gun alignment, which is another benefit to this tank. In terms of tactics for this tank, it offers a variety of tactics, right? It can be a scout and it can spot, but bear in mind, firing and before you know where the big guns are in the other team, it can be dangerous. You can go hull down in this tank. You can flank in this tank. So basically you can play all of the key roles that a medium tank should play, with the added bonus of also having that 10 degrees of gun depression, which allows this possibility for going hull down and sniping. And of course with that gun handling, sniping in this tank is really, really phenomenal and very, very successful. Now, the other thing to go back to about this tank is its power to weight ratio and its mobility. That M index of 21 is one of the best in Blitz. This tank is incredibly mobile, and I describe this tank as the tank you don't know because I think even a lot of experienced blitzers probably unaware of just how good the gun handling and mobility is in this tank. As I said, both the mobility index and the gun index are two of the best in Blitz across any tanks. It has almost the same maneuverability and mobility as the Leopard, but it actually has better turret armor, and that allows you to go into those hold down positions. And you will get bounces in this tank. I've played it now for a couple of days while I was shooting this video, and the amount of times that I blocked, 2 to 3k of damage was significant. And the amount of times you can do 2, 3, even 4k, and I think the highest damage I did in those 2 days is about 5.2k of damage. It really is, you see there, just the gun system in action. The gun system is fantastic. You can put it into the smallest of targets. It won't let you down. This tank, despite that long reload time, because the gun handling is so good, you very rarely miss shots like this one here. Again, eye of the needle type of stuff into the turret of the M103. So therefore your actual DPM compared to like theoretical DPM is really, really good in this tank. I do think, though, in fairness, I think it's important to emphasize this: the 6.9 second reload, even using calibrated shells, I think is still probably too long, right? But having said that, when you combine the mobility and the gun handling of this tank, if it had a significantly lower reload time, then this thing would be OP. It's a really excellent tank as it is, but I think if it had like a sub 6 second reload, I think it would probably be OP. So I kind of understand why Wargaming have given it this 6.9 second, or going out to almost 7.5 seconds if you use calibrated shells. But this tank, I really enjoyed playing it. If you enjoy fast moving, really agile and mobile tanks, you will really enjoy this tank. It is a circle of death master, because with that mobility, you can easily get around even some other medium tanks, let alone heavy and TDs, right? It's just phenomenal tank. Has a bit of armor on the front, so you can ram tanks, especially light armor tanks like the BC here. With that power to weight ratio, by the way, you can bully tanks. Even though this tank is lightly armored, it's very, very difficult to push it around if you're trying to ram it or whatever, or trying to face hug it, because of that power to weight ratio, right? There's a lot of torque behind the engine. Actually, it's a twin engine system in this tank. It has this twin engine multi-fuel diesel systems, will actually give it this phenomenal power to weight ratio and this phenomenal maneuverability. So, that's why, going back to what I described this tank as, the tank you probably don't know, there's two aspects to that, right? A double entendre, as they say in French, right? There is the aspect that you probably were not aware of, its historical significance, or the fact that so many of them produced and saw combat across so many different places. But also, you're probably not aware of just how good it is in Blitz. I think it's probably because it was expensive when it came out, etc. Not so many people have it. But also probably, a lot of people haven't looked into exactly, even if they're playing it, exactly just how good that mobility and gun index is. This was one of my top 5 picks for the collectible tanks, if they'll be available in the Christmas event. I definitely recommend it if you don't have it. If you're a medium tank player and you don't have this, I guarantee you won't be disappointed. Its little brother, the AMX 30 Premier prototype, is also one of the recommendations. It's Meadsy's recommendation, and it's Muffin's favourite tank. But, if you're looking to step up or go for something different, then I could definitely recommend this. It only has 81% credit coefficient. It's at tier 10, so the credit coefficients are lower. But as my father used to say about restaurants and things, if you have to ask how expensive it is, you probably can't afford it. So if you're worrying about your credit consumption at tier 10, probably shouldn't be playing too much, because it's not the most economical of tiers to play in. Let's have a recap. So this is an excellent medium tank. It has super, super qualities, which I really love, and they're kind of exactly the type of tanks I like playing. Its mobility is just superb. The M index of 21 is just wow. It has a wow factor. It's phenomenal. Gun index, wow. Basically, you're talking about a medium tank with Grille gun handling. That's which so, and you're talking about the speed, agility. It's a difficult target to hit, and it has that bit of turret armor and gun depression. Rate of fire is a weakness. 6.9 second, I think, is a bit too long. But having said that, difficult to see how they can make it a bit lower, because then I think this tank would be just OP. Hull down is also an option. This tank, the turret is very strong. The gun mantle takes up most of it, and the 10 degrees of gun depression means that it allows you that as another type of play option and play style. You can do spotting and scouting of this tank, but as I said, please be aware of firing. When you fire in this tank, if you're moving, your concealment numbers go out to 296 meters, which means basically everything's going to spot you up. Even a Death Star will spot you up. So just be careful about that. Take that on board as a caveat. But overall, this is a superb medium tank. Little known historically, but extremely significant historically, because it was a watershed, as you said, in main battle tank design. And that, of course, is emphasised by its longevity the fact that, although taken out of service by France in the early 2000s, it's still plying its trade and fighting even today as we make this video. So cheers, Mush. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. And now I guess all remains for me to say is pants off.